gosh. Hey, Stella, how are you?
Hey, good morning, guys. Yeah, I'm
Good
good. Sorry,
morning.
I'm late. I was in a meeting with our protocol, and
Oh,
oh my god, those guys, like, they're great.
yeah.
Yeah, they can merge your NFTs on chain. So, know how you
Okay.
can do forging or crafting in like, you know, strategic or role play games, right? It's
Yeah.
essentially
Yeah.
that just with NFTs and specifically, obviously, gaming NFTs, right? So, that's obviously super interesting for the Alana project, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we're getting closer to actually having our first use case. Um, yeah, let's
Oh
see.
wow!
Oh,
Congratulations.
wow, great.
Yeah, I mean, nothing to congratulate yet. I still have to write up the
Hey.
mechanism that I'm looking for, right? We all
Mm.
know I'm so fast with things these days.
Well, ask me about the token engineering exams.
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
lagging
But
behind.
honestly, I have a bigger plan. Okay, so I mean, it's 2 weeks out, I believe. Like is NFT NYC 2.5 3 weeks, right? So I obviously right now focus on preparing for this, like getting the panel sorted out and doing like all of the stuff that I've pushed away. So for example, in terms of rebranding Alana, right? Also her visual has to be rebranded, right? Her visual self. So I applied new makeup. I adapted the suit accordingly, right? Made new textures. Blah 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 blah. 5,000 hours later, and then the next step of that is obviously having all of these renderings available, putting them on all of her platforms, right? And have her stand proud in like her new attire and everything. But then after NFT NYC, I have, I think, 3 months until permissionless. So in those 3 months, you guys will see me on fucking fire. I'm gonna roll and rumble and crash through token engineer. I'm gonna take all the
Let's go.
tests and do everything at once. So
Let's
that's
go.
kind of my master plan.
Sounds
That's
good.
great master plan.
Please hold me
I love it.
responsible for having said this, okay?
Yeah,
I really
yeah.
need
All
to
We
do
right.
will.
this.
So you want some kind of social control, right?
Please, please,
Electric
like,
shock therapy.
Yeah. Implementing a governance structure for your work.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Look at this. So this is really interesting. Maybe also for you guys, right? But because we have been pushing forward very strong with the magazine, we are looking at potential sponsors right now. So I was like, damn, now we do need to incorporate somehow, some way, right? And I cannot get away from this any longer. And I've been assembling research for definitely over like 8 months now, right? But a lot of this research has become so obsolete because of all the regulations in the US. Because
Mm.
initially, the US is like so known for being like the place for tech, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to
And
blockchain
for
technology,
innovation and free development.
yeah, but sadly, that has proved to be absolutely false, right? And what we are doing. So,
Yeah.
all of that research, I was like, last week, I was like,
Oh no. Okay.
right? And instead, I looked at like other alternatives, and I talked to, I don't know if Roro remembers, I met this guy at DEFCON Bogota, who's also German and running a project, and he's like a nomad of some sort, and it was really interesting talking to him again. He gave me tips about forming your LLC essentially in Estonia. Then I talked to Rishi from Machinations, or from Jarvis Labs, I should say. He's not from Machinations. And he is registering his company in Singapore, right? And so I was like, you know what? Fuck it. There are no regulations currently in Peru. Why am not just incorporating in Peru? It's gonna make stuff so much easier,
Yeah.
right? Because I have a direct handle on things. If whatever goes wrong, I am here, right? And I can take care of it. Which is not the case if I do this in Singapore, if I do this in Australia or Cayman Islands or whatever, Because, I mean, all of these other options, they tend to request that you have the money then to take care of things if they go wrong, right? And you have to fly there, you have to book a hotel, you have to employ someone who, you know, can handle these things. So
No, but I thought, does it matter? Because like, isn't it the, like if your customers or whoever you're dealing with is from US, then you still have to deal with US law,
no,
right?
you
Like,
don't.
no,
No,
it
not if
depends
you,
where you're
not if you,
incorporated.
yeah, you have to state that very clearly in your terms and conditions,
Okay.
that, you know, the location for like the law being executed will be Peru, and then it has to
Okay.
happen here. This is what they
Okay.
sign essentially off on when they when they
Okay.
buy something from you, right? But also, you know, nothing is bought like directly with us, right? Because we are always taking care integrating with reliable partners instead of proposing like our own security infrastructure, which I think is very crazy to do. So we're obviously not doing that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
No, but it's just like, you know, I had some talks this week with some lawyers from here who are also very familiar with blockchain technology and blockchain related projects. One of them that I have a meeting later today with, he's also the founder of Ethereum Lima. So he works for Ernst & Young, you know, so I bet that he has a lot to say about this and probably a lot of good insight. But there are no current regulations here, and they will probably not come anytime soon. As long as we will be paying our taxes, there will be no problem with anything, right? And,
great. Yeah.
and so I'm like, let's do this here. And we are planning to registering as a duck. So I turned a little bit serious these days, and I was like, Nucleus Guardians, which is the core team, right? Just a storytelling name, it's a cute name. And then I was like, Nucleus Guardians, we have to be serious now. We have to incorporate. So here are some things we need to think about, right? Because all of them, they don't necessarily know a lot about what we are talking here every week, right? So I want to ensure that they at least have like a framework to work with, right? So I give them like the raw draft. I'm saying like, okay, so incorporating means, right? We have to decide on a consensus agreement. Yes, consensus agreement will consist of, and then it's like the bullet points of what will be the things that we need to talk about, right? Like responsibilities in a given role, voting mechanism, and so on. And then obviously the question came back, which, you know, this is the loop to us here today. The question came back, what kind of voting mechanisms are there, right? So I compiled this very short and concise list of some of the most, I think, used ones, currently used ones. And it was really interesting to see, because right now we are dealing with the following problem. And this is a good discussion point, I think. Essentially, we are deciding ownership currently on the level of contribution. And we are tracking contribution. Actually, we have to set you up, reminds me, Roro, for the webinar. We need to set you up on DWork. So we are tracking all of these contributions through DWork, which is a task management tool, right? But it works very autonomous and it's very decentralized, blah, blah, blah. And so, well, I essentially own 99.9% of the company currently, right? Because I'm the one who has been...
So, talk about decentralization.
Exactly. And I was like, guys, this is like a really bad problem for a duck, right? Like, I shouldn't be owning that much. Also, I don't have an intention to own that much, right? That's the worst part of it. I do want this project to be decided by the people who work and put in the most of passion into the project. And if at some point I'm not that person, or the ideas that I have might seem like old and outdated, I don't want myself to be running this shit show, right? I want the people to take over who then have the next best ideas for it, not me. And well, you know, that stirred up some discussion, right? And I was like, well, there are two, because they were like, so how can we fix this? I'm like, well, one part is you put away a little bit more time on your part and put that into the project, and it can certainly use that, right? The other option is we have to pay for the incorporation. So instead of me paying this all by myself and harvesting even more points on my board, right? How about we split the sum, right? I mean, it's a different story if I have to pay all of this by myself, which I can, but preferably this would be a split amount between different members, and hence they, garner more ownership in the project because they have supported the incorporation of the project. But it's a ton of questions to be answered, and now they're like, oh shit, it's getting serious.
And that's real questions. Nice.
So
that's the move. That's the move from theory, to practice.
Yeah, I mean it is, and also it's interesting that people ask you about voting mechanisms. That's the first thing they ask, right? They want to know like how's the project's future being decided. So it's interesting to see that because voting participation usually is very low, right? As we've confirmed many times before. And seeing that there still is actually a strong interest of like, how will decisions be made? It's kind of nice to see, honestly. And it was also interesting. So I listed, let me reference this for you guys. I listed the following mechanisms. I talked about weighted voting because that would be right now the most obvious choice, right? Then there's obviously quadratic voting, delegative voting, a future key, conviction voting, and continuous approval voting. And it was really interesting. One of the Nucleus Guardians said had a misunderstanding, and she thought that weighted is only about money power, right? Which is not true. It's about either money or contribution, right? So it's both. I mean,
whatever metric you choose,
Yeah, so it's actually, I feel like one of the most fair ones when it comes to stakeholder shares, right? Because you're giving the opportunity of money to those people who really might not have the opportunity of time currently, maybe running their own project, right? That takes time away from you. But you might have the finances and still the passion for the project. So for example, I have one member, she's from Berlin, she works now for Mark Kane, and obviously, her day is pretty busy with Mark Kane, right? There is a lot to do. And so she doesn't necessarily, she cannot up her contribution time necessarily, but she might have the finances to help with a few $100s to incorporate, right? So I think that should be probably fair enough, essentially.
New person.
Yeah.
You should say hi.
Oh, hey, hi. You're right. Wojtek is back. I think he warned us that he will be back. Hi.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone.
Hi.
Hey. I'm not back. This is my first time here.
Oh, okay.
So
sorry.
I was not able to join because the link that's in the description of the event is just throwing me to community guidelines. So I had no idea how to join, and now I just saw 4 people in some groups. So I was like, let me give it a try. How are you guys?
Hi. Now we have a blind date.
Yeah. He texted on the group. He wanted to join since a while. No, but I'm wondering. You said the link doesn't actually take you to the study group too.
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay. I didn't know this.
It was happening this morning also when I was messaging, because the link and whatnot, and it would kick me back. So then I found the announcements and how to get back in. But yeah.
Oh, okay. And it doesn't even say we're on study group too. We should actually edit our event thing. I'll tell Tati.
But it says T Visual Learner Study Group in the event.
Yes, but somehow
but it doesn't say where we are meeting.
On the link, you just end up, on the general page of token engineering, and you're not guided through our study group and this voice channel.
I
guess people are always looking for the voice and video channel, but can't find it.
Yeah, actually, there is a thing why that is. Because it uses the bot that I recommended, and the bot that I recommended cannot yet do that. So you will have to go on the calendar invite, right? And this is where, but the link will always just link here because there's.
No, but you should just write a text that we're meeting on the channel number 2 or something.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
Yeah.
Roro, you're in charge. Write to Patti.
I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it.
Sounds good.
Right.
So Wojtek, welcome. This is the Visual Learner Study Group, as you have now read. Roro is my co-host. I'm the other co-host. We're co-hosting this. Then there is Lutra and Strata Trader, which are like the most loyal members of this group and have been pulling through to, drum roll, chapter number 5. So that's kind of incredible. All the other videos, most of them I want to say, because I fucked up some recordings, I'm sorry for that. They are on the YouTube channel, or on our YouTube on my YouTube channel, but also Rohan is gonna upload them on his.
Yeah.
And you can rewatch them there while you go through the chapters. Obviously there's a chat and you can push all your questions you have in the chat. Anything I forgot?
You said you finished a couple of modules, right? You said you finished
that's right. Yeah. So I finished modules 1 to 4. So
okay,
so,
yeah.
so
So you're
I'm
perfectly on time. Yeah.
5 now.
Yeah, you're on time with us.
And I was not yet part of any study group. I was doing it on my own base, but I felt like that, like, even if I finish the module 5 on my own, I want to get more connections and have like opportunity to do some exercises like beyond what's in the materials. So
yeah, that's
here I am.
What's your background again? Just a quick background.
Yeah, I'm economist. I did some consulting in finance and in supply chain, and now I'm doing like a scientific research on blockchain, but like from the side of economics, not IT. And this is kind of my hobby, and I just want to discover whether it will be my long-term hobby now.
Oh, you should meet Lutra then. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm also an economist. And I'm doing this as well, you know, as my getting more personal knowledge and a hobby for the future. Yeah. So shake hands on this one.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm super interested in knowing like how you operate. So just please carry on, and I'm happy to observe. I would need to leave in like 35 minutes, but now that I know where the calls are, I will join another time as well.
Actually, I think it's really good you're joining now, because we tend to think that now in chapter 5 we're in the pre-reading section currently. So we've had to read some stuff, and I can already tell you guys I didn't read one thing. Actually, I didn't watch the video. That's the one thing I didn't do. I read everything else. And I think the most important thing now is kind of like bouncing off ideas and being in conversation about what we have been reading. So, yeah, I think you're joining at the perfect time. Strata, you have to drop? Don't drop. Why?
I have I have a quick meeting, and just only for 30 minutes, but then I'll join right back. I know. Okay. It's, what can I say? People book meetings in the early morning with me, and I'm like, but I'll change it in the future. I'm gonna block off this time. Trust me.
Yes, please. Okay. We need.
But I'll be back. Don't worry.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let me share my screen and let's get onto let's have some visuals. Let's have some visuals about what we had to read. Anyone wants to play music while we're doing this? Okay. So this is kind of, in case you're curious, Wojtek, this is like an application I use to kind of sort my own thoughts and go through everything that we're doing in token engineering. Once I've completed this, I will make this openly accessible so everyone can go through this as well. It contains also some of my notes. Not all of them are being in here now, but I will add that obviously. And the latest stuff we went through was foundations of decentralized governance, social scalability, social choice theory. I think we let this one out. I actually read this one though. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I actually did.
No, I know we were reading. Yeah.
And no free lunch theorem. So what did you guys think? I think there was a lot about like social choice theory in all of these, except for foundations of decentralized governance. So what did you guys think? Like any specific thoughts along those lines?
I actually got really interested in the Arrow's impossibility, like Arrow's theorem, and also like just stuff around it, like the research that happened around it earlier. Like I forgot his name. Condorcet was
Yeah.
So even his work was very fascinating. I actually went down the entire rabbit hole of reading about his life. So apparently he also like was a mathematician and did a lot of like he did a lot of he was involved in like differential and integral calculus. He was then friends with Thomas Jefferson at some point. He was also a feminist, advocating for a lot of like these using like I mean getting groups involved in politics, also using math in politics. So fascinating life, and eventually a part of the French Revolution and got I guess jailed and killed because of some of the things that he said. So I don't know. I found his work pretty fascinating. I found Arrow's work very fascinating because Arrow's work was based on Condorcet's stuff. And I have some graphs to show also. Even like I'm forgetting the name, but even the theorem that I think he had this theorem where Condorcet's theorem that the more it is called jury something. What is it called? Do you know this, Luta? I forgot the name.
Yes, it's about that you have to judge, about a guy that did some offensive things, and it's about the more judges there are, the better, the thing that the jury is deciding will get. So it's an early form, I would call it, of swarm intelligence.
Yeah. I think that was basically that the more people involved in the decision making, more likely it is that you'll have the right answer. So that was the first theory that he was working with, and he had this mathematical model to prove it, which is that even a slight competency in your in the crowd that's deciding, when you increase the number of people who are deciding, you end up getting more and more accurate results.
Yes.
And then he had another theorem which actually found all kinds of paradoxes in this, where where the swarm can go wrong, and that's where a bunch of the like the concepts of where voting can go wrong started coming out, the 5 criteria and stuff like that. So this universality, responsiveness, all of these came from those paradoxes that he was trying to study. So very fascinating work. I was just like going down that line.
Well, I would be interested in your opinion about Arrow's impossibility theorem. Because honestly, well, and I didn't dare to say, but I found it always somehow overstated. I mean, I see the problem, right? And there's a huge theoretical, let's say, knowledge and thinking about this. But if we reduce it, let's say, to practical problems, I don't see there's so much in it. So I was always struggling with this kind of impossibility theorem. Huge theoretical work, but I think it's quite easy to have some forms of practical solutions to it. So I was always wondering, all right, there is Arrow's impossibility theorem, but so what?
No, so if we go, I can send you a link. Stella, can you open this? Maybe.
Yeah.
I'll send it on the chat. And go to that table at the bottom in the Wikipedia page. Because, by the way, I forgot, there's this exam, sorry, I'm still in my college era. There's this essay, there's a not competition also, it's like a group of people coming together writing essays about a topic called protocols, or summer of protocols, that's there. And I applied for it with this proposal that I want to actually study different kind of voting systems and build simulation, like game theoretic simulations of voters using these spatial models of voting, and try to build something like this, like which is a graph that goes through different methods of voting, and it checks whether these criteria, which is majority rule, major loser rule, or Condorcet theorem. If you see the fourth column is Condorcet, this thing, yeah.
Condorcet.
And if you just and if you just keep it over that, it tells you what are the criterias that the particular voting method fails. Just on the blue like Condorcet thing, if you just keep it hover over it, it tells you what the
Shit.
yeah. I don't think it's coming, but yeah. Always chooses the So like it is very fascinating. Going through this page actually tells you all the different voting methods that exist and which ones fail in what criteria. And what is fascinating here is that on one end, like this is all theoretical, but there were a bunch of papers that I read which were in the reference section underneath also, which actually end up telling you that most voting methods that were used, even if theoretically they were solving Condorcet criteria, they were having the same results as like normal voting, like normal one person, one vote systems.
Yeah.
Like, so most voting methods actually in practice end up having the same exact issue, which is that either most people don't vote or most people, the people who vote are not as educated. Like there are a bunch of like issues that creep in, which end up having the same results no matter what voting method you use. I have a bunch of these articles, and maybe I'll link it to our visual learners group, which was very fascinating for me. Yeah.
Let's say something as an interim on specifically that actually. You know, the World Economic Forum has like an Instagram page, like apparently everyone these days, right? And so I don't know what the World Economic Forum is to you guys, but for me it's an institutionalized platform that it has also some responsibility in educating the world on world economic matters, right?
And least that's what they want to do.
I'm not sure so much about that, because I recently saw a post in which they, as per usual, just made an opinionated statement. And I think that's been inherently wrong with a lot of voting systems. Hasn't been necessarily the voting system, but how voting is being approached, right? So instead of educating people, what most institutions or entities do is they give voters an opinionated statement, right? A predefined opinionated statement, and say like, hey, this is what we want you to do, essentially. This is how we want you to think about this, right? So I think, like,
it's framing.
So it's not only like when we think about redesigning, governance or voting. I think it's not only about the type of voting a system or a mechanism that we implement, right? It's also about like all the prior like uplead essentially to how voting is being performed needs to be rethought and redesigned. And I honestly, I rarely comment on anyone's Instagram stuff because I'm always kind of afraid of being cancelled, to be honest, right? But I couldn't hold back on this one. I clearly stated I'm very disappointed to see such an opinionated post. It was about Argentina and Brazil forming an alliance to essentially de-dollarize, right? Yeah. And honestly, from their perspective, and not from like a globalization perspective, right? I do understand their move. I do understand. Cool. Like none of the world has even the slightest care or opinion, generally speaking, much about South America, right? It's like South America for a lot of people just doesn't exist, honestly, right? It's like a forgotten continent of sorts. And they're so highly dependent on what the dollar does. And it's been so unhealthy for them for years and years and years, right? So their approach to this is actually very understandable. And the World Economic Forum just opinionated a statement like, this is such a bad decision, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, wait, no, it's not a bad decision. It's a bad decision from a global perspective, I understand, right? Because you add complexity and risk to the mix. And we all know how like Argentinian economy has been bad for like long time, right? Very like volatile and fluctuating. So I get that, but you cannot say that, right? You cannot do that, because this is how you essentially end up with bad votes being made. This is how you end up with it, by proposing an opinion, right? Because there's always two sides to a story. There is like the story of, you know, Brazil and Argentina want to become like more powerful in how they stand in the world economy, right? And in like the continental economy. And there's the story about the World Economic Forum trying to promote globalization and global economy. But some countries might just not be there yet, right?
But I mean, for whom advantage? For me, the World Economic Forum is somehow a coalition of the rich and the powerful. And they have their own interest. So, and if now countries or different opinions are moving away from this certain kind of ideology that they propose, the World Economic Forum, well, it's quite clear for me that this will get some form of critique, because it's not for sure in the interest, you know, of this coalition.
But Luther, here's the thing. If you read the, I don't know, 5,000 comments under the post, and don't worry, I didn't spend like the time to read all 5,000. But I read like the first few hundreds, right? And I want to say an overwhelming amount of people, and this is where, you know, this comes in again, they are just sheep. They think whatever is written there makes sense, right? And they're like, oh, they're such dumb assholes, they should fix like their own economy first. Right? And you're like, oh my God.
I'm highly skeptical about the whole institution, World Economic Forum.
Right.
Well, I agree with you.
So for me, you know, there is no kind of representative democracy behind it or something. There is no objective criteria who can join, you know, who can give a speech. But if you look at those actors, it's some kind of world elite, that comes together on a mountain in Switzerland, very neutral.
It's a nice mountain, though.
They are on a very neutral place, like in Thomas Mann's Zauberberg. It's a mountain in Switzerland, the world elite with all the money, and they are telling you, well, this is the right economic policy, and of course, you have to follow the right kind of thinking, the right theory, the right economic principles.
Hi, Chris, by the way. Welcome.
Hey, guys. Thank you.
I could tell Wojtek felt like I think he wanted to say something. I feel like he wanted to say something. Did you?
Yeah, I mean, 2 points. First, Lutra, for you, it might be interesting just to Google how much the ticket is to attend the World Economic Forum. I mean, when I saw the numbers, it was impressive. And the second point is to what you mentioned, Stella, about this like opinions being published. Recently, I'm following the banking crisis in the US and in Europe, and I'm following the statements from the Fed, from European Central Bank, from all of these institutions. And what worries me a lot is that those statements are not clear. They are written like in this kind of like a coded language or in something, and it's very difficult for an average person to understand. I have education in economics, and I read a statement from the European Central Bank on swap lines. I had no idea what they were trying to do, and what actually helped me was when someone took the statement and throw it into ChatGPT to explain it. That was the only thing that helped me. And if these kind of statements would continue to be in coded language, then of course people would be publishing opinions and like what you mentioned, like biasing the public opinion, because the majority of people would not be able to make their own mind.
What the central banks are saying is more or less camouflage. Really, it's camouflage. And even the former president of the ECB, Jean-Paul Juncker, he said in certain kinds of situations, you have to lie. Yeah? And now the central banks, yeah, especially the Fed, is telling each and everybody, oh, it's safe. We stop the contagion and we bail out, every depositor and so on and so forth. But the problems inside the US banking system are still there. It's not just about signature, Silicon Valley. More than 300 US banks have huge balance sheet problems, and they won't be able to earn money because of this inverse yield curve right now. So that is what the central bankers are saying. It's camouflage, The best thing would be nobody is getting the information, nobody is reacting, because another bank run or some form of panic would crash the system, and that's the reason why they try, to hide it and to hide the seriousness of the situation, of the crisis, behind nice little words.
You guys,
No, I want to ask a model question.
You guys realize we're living through the movie Fight Club right now, right? Just without the punching.
Yes.
Okay.
No, it's crazy. I mean, even if you see the Balaji Srinivasan stuff, I mean, it is very obviously out there, but it's scary that it's being considered that is a potential outcome in the next 3 months. That we are looking at like an entire crash, hyperinflation of the dollar. That's insane. That's so crazy. But I have a question for you, because this is a model question I don't know where I heard it, but I modified it a little bit. Let's say, Stella, and I'm asking you first, okay? You're the you're the editor of a massive financial magazine, okay? And everybody reads you to get the information about the situation of the financial markets right now. Let's say for a fact that there are two situations that could happen. If you put out the truth of what's happening in the banking system, 100% that the entire market will crash, just from your information putting out there. And a lot of people will lose their jobs. A lot of people will die. From the food, it'll be a crisis that will come out. And the second is if you hide the information and don't say the truth and just say that, hey, everything's fine, there's a 40% or 30% chance, let's say, that things will be okay because there won't be any bank runs. What is your moral obligation there?
So you're proposing a dilemma, I see. I like that.
Yeah.
I love dilemmas. Okay. So
should you tell the truth or should you hide it?
Well, it is a very complex question, right? Because there's not one straight answer to this. Because you're always at the losing end of this, no matter how you turn this, right? There is no way to escape from that. But I think there is a fair way of doing it, and then there's an unfair way. So the fair way, I think, would be the middle ground of both, essentially. So if you already have that financial magazine, right, shift your content, right? Instead of promoting banks, let's start softly by introducing alternative ideas, right? What other things are out there worth looking at and reinvesting your money into, right? You don't necessarily have to.
I mean, this is a moral dilemma. So you only have these two options. You can't come up with a perfect third option.
No, but you don't have to go out and be like, yeah, guys, it's right. We're gonna be fucked, right? And you don't have to be going out there and lying, right? You can go out there and say well, there's an opportunity this is gonna happen. So how about we decentralize our money bit by bit? You don't have to. This is something I told my parents, because my parents were like, we don't think we want to decentralize all of our money. We're understanding what you're trying to do there, and it seems somewhat reasonable. My father's a very logical person, so he was I understand partially why this is supposed to be a good thing. But and I said no need to do, why do people always tend to think in extremes, right? This is what brought us into this mess in the first place. Like, oh, there's only this option, or there's only this option. Maybe there's like 70 options in between. Have you considered any of those, right? So instead of, like, you can utilize your platform. You don't have to lie. You can just shift your topic away from both topics, right? And generate stuff that will actually help people to be stable once the shift comes. Okay, done. That's my answer.
I got it.
Here you go.
I have to deliver an answer as well, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I would follow the path that Stella has gone. Yeah. You do not have to say everything is fucked up. Now we have a crisis or something like that. But on the other hand, I think there is no need for this kind of obviously lying about the problems of the system. Yeah? There should be a way of telling them, all right, we have a banking crisis. Yes, that's true. But we will bail out at least. Bam, 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 bam. So please don't worry and panic. Yeah. So I think you can be a little bit more offensive with regard to the true nature of the problem, and still trying to prevent the kind of panic and bank run.
Okay. Wojtek, where do you go?
This is my first meeting, so you should be light on me. I mean, I would be definitely thinking about like the constituents, like who I'm doing this for, and I'm not sure how I would answer in your two scenarios. But for me to be like straightforward, not to lie, would definitely be a way. And in your scenario, that would mean a complete like crash and everything. But I might be able to get some off-ramp, some exit. Maybe not now, maybe in the coming months. But I need to be open about this so that people know what's gonna happen. Like that, there's gonna be inflation in high double digits, something like that. It's gonna be shitty. So you should do something with your money.
Prepare the people at least for what's coming, because
But for that you need to get the off ramp. And what I fear now is that people are not seeing what the government is actually thinking, like what the off ramp would be, and therefore they have no idea like what to do.
Interesting.
I agree. This feels more scary, Wojtek. The fact that people don't know what governments are plotting, and I think this is a scariness, or people have been scared of this, not just like people like us, right, who might like think and contemplate about those things. I think a lot of people are mostly scared about this, and this is also, I think, what is causing bank runs for the most part. It's this inaccessibility of those systems, and actually looking for yourself, like why do they crash, or what actually happened, right? And this is where the next big problem comes in. So one problem for these voting mechanisms is all the time that leads up to them, right? And the other part is we've been educating people so much on being dependent, right, on like company structures, on governmental structures, on certain put in place procedures, that now in Web3 we keep asking them, and I think I'm very certain this is essentially the root cause of most of the successful scams, is the fact that people have kind of like partially lost their ability of self-responsible thinking, right? So instead of like so when I read something and I find this quite outrageous, right, I tend to have this instinct. It's not an instinct, it was taught to me by my father, where I'm like, this is weird, like let me read up on this. But how many people do this? Like how many people in your friend circle, right, or family circle even do this, right? So that's the next big problem. So you have the voting mechanism, you have like the current state of education and self-responsible human beings, and you have like all the jitter and fine granular stuff that leads up to like from proposal stage to the actual voting, right? So we have already 3 problems. We don't have to deal with like just the voting mechanism.
Yeah, I mean, oh, what happened? Okay, no, I was talking about even like a lot of this is also connected. I think initially you were talking about the marketing thing, like the media thing, right? How media also affects everybody's perception. So therefore, the voting systems, like that's one thing we need to consider in order to even consider how people are gonna vote. And I think that's why, like, I really feel, I don't know if you all have read like Noam Chomsky's work, but manufacturing consent and things like that, where I think that really informed my way of thinking when I was growing up, because yeah, just for the first time seeing that, hey, like all of these things somehow, whether they are, I think a part of it is emergent and a part of it is very active decisions by like organizations to control and subvert and control thought in some sense. I mean, maybe I'm going on a different tangent, but I really feel like, oh, you need to leave.
Oh, Wojtek.
Yeah, but nice to have you, Wojtek, and
Thanks
please join
for
again.
joining. See you hopefully next Friday.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Bye
Yeah,
bye.
have a nice day. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's just, I don't know. All of these problems seem so like overwhelming sometimes when you look at them.
Yeah. How to find a solution if the world is such a complex thing?
Yeah, because everything, it's like you try to put a band-aid on one and everything else starts leaking. Like, yeah.
Roro, would you say you like reading?
Yeah, I do.
Lutra, would you say you like reading?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so this is something the 3 of us have in common. So if the whole world would enjoy reading, why is there now a TLDR of everything?
Yeah.
Right?
Because
so the majority of people don't
it has
enjoy
something to do with a new kind of media. Really. With those kind of smartphones, WhatsApp, chats and so on.
Honestly, I disagree on that. I think it's not just the technology, it's also the fact that we are running so low on time. With so many things we need to do. Sure. And then, you know, time is like really at a low end of this. So having that said, it means we, like, you know, when you're thinking of educating self-responsible beings. So one thing that showed to me informing the Nucleus Guardians of what's coming up next and what we need to talk about, right? It made me very aware of the fact that in the future, also when we write proposals, we need to maybe take the time to show, like, you know, possible outcomes, right? So it's not just about writing up a proposal, but then you would need to add like the most 3 probable outcomes depending on what people will be voting for, right? That would be the TLDR, right? Saying like, hey, if you vote for this, the probability is like very high that this will be the outcome. If you vote for this, that would be the most probable outcome. Or if you do this, this would be the most probable outcome. And then people can decide, hopefully on an informed basis, very quickly, like what do they want to do? Because a whole proposal, which is still necessary for people like us who like to be truly informed, right? But it will take you time to go through it and read it, right? And I can already tell.
And understand it. I mean, it's one thing, you know, to read the proposal, but to really see the deeper meaning of that, or to see the consequences. And I guess that's what you're saying, Stella. Yeah, it would be very helpful, even for those participants that do not like to go deep and to read. To have some kind of better informed decision making. And the way to get this is, use the scientific method. What you are telling is, if you choose this, this might be the outcome. This is if then. It's a scientific explanation. And
I feel like it should also, like the example you had given in the Germany situation, where like there is a website apparently which gives you these are the maybe policies and
the Valomat.
That is brilliant. And I think, but the thing is, it should also have this, because I feel like, because these are complex systems, right? When you, so for example, the banking situation, if you tell the truth and everybody takes their money out, no banks will sustain, because that's not how banks work anyway, right? So I think it should be like, hey, this is the truth, that these are the different buckets of like choices that we have. And under 20% people taking out money, this happens. Under 30% people voting on this happens. Under like maybe like strata of, but that becomes so complex. Like it becomes like a matrix of policies and how many people are acting on those decisions. Because, for example, like even for COVID, right? People just started stacking like toilet papers in the US. That is a very standard, but that is a natural response to you thinking that, see, if everyone's doing it, I kind of have to do it. So it's a runaway effect where you can't help it. Like everybody is forced to do it. So how do you avoid situations like that? Because if you inform them the complete truth, then everybody will realize, oh, it's a game of like whoever's gonna be the last one is the loser.
Yeah, it tends to have this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy character.
Yeah. Same with the question I asked you with the media thing, where like just telling the truth will make it true. And there is a chance that telling the lie might give you a shot. Like that's where I feel like that's why like it's not as simple as just explaining policies. That hey, these are the policies. It's also like policies with, if under this policy, if these actions are taken, this happens. Because the world is like that, right? Like everything has like these 20 options.
Guys, hold the thought and please keep discussing. I have to excuse myself for a few minutes. I will be back.
Okay, sure.
All right.
I want to read a book, like since she mentioned, like, and I think it's relevant to the topic.
Yeah.
Let me share my screen. It's called The Denial of Death. I don't know if you've read this.
No.
By Ernest Becker. Maybe I can. Somehow my screen share isn't working, so I'll just shut my cam. This should probably work. Can you see my?
No. Right now, there's nothing new on my screen.
Yeah, it's loading still.
Oh, okay. Yes,
okay.
yes.
And yeah. Right. So this should probably work. Can you see me on the screen somewhere?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfectly.
So there is a section in this book that's so good. He talks about how there's this tyranny of, I mean, like, there's so much truth in the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, here. I think somewhere here. The idea was this, that there's this here. In these pages, I try to show the fear of death as a universe. Okay, no, not this. I know, I'll have to find it. But it was a beautiful section talking about how the issue in the world isn't that we don't know the truth about things. It's that there's just an abundance of truth. And there's just so many things that the issue isn't knowing the right things. It's about, there's just so much information out there that finding the right thing has become the problem, which was the opposite of initial ages where like, you just didn't have access to books or information in general. Now we have access to too much information.
Yeah.
And it was just very beautifully written in this section, but I can't find it anymore.
Yeah.
But you should really read this book, by the way.
I will get this. The Denial of Death. All right.
By Ernest Becker.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I will get this. It sounds really interesting.
Very fascinating book. Where I find it again, I have to give you two things now. One is this, and there was another link that I have to find.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, it's again, this is one of the books that really shaped my way of looking at the world.
I will get it and tell you when I've done my reading task.
Yeah, perfect. In fact, even just the first chapter, I think, I've read the first 3 chapters 10 times maybe. Like, that's how much I love the book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which book are you talking about? Can you please
Yeah, Ernest Becker. Do you know Woody Allen?
Yes.
The director, yeah. So in his movie called Annie Hall, he mentions or shows the book thrice. And that's what got me curious. I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
How is it called? Annie Holt?
Annie Hall. A-N-N, I'll type it out. Annie Hall. It's again a really beautiful film. Really funny film. Yeah, I'm trying to find that line
I
because I
always
really want to know.
wondered who watches these kind of movies. Now I
Me.
do know.
Now you have your answer.
You're
The
probably
three movies
also
I
a
would
sucker
recommend.
for Mulholland Drive, aren't you?
Yeah, that's the kind of yeah.
Oh, you're such an old soul and such a young buddy.
Yeah. No, there are
Welcome
three
back.
movies I really love. Yeah, hi Sweta.
Thank you.
There's one movie called Waking Life, which also I would highly recommend. It's an entire book about entire movie about dreams, and they shot the film and they sketched all over it. So it's like a very shaky film, and every scene is just a dialogue with a new person.
Wait, how's this one called? Dreams?
Waking Life. It's on the chat. Waking Life. I think I love movies with dialogues. I think that's what I love.
I think I've actually watched this one. I feel like I've watched this one. Yeah. It's a good one, you're right. All right.
In Bruges is a really good one too.
Yeah, In Bruges also is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
You've seen it?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. Waking Life. I haven't seen that one.
Told you, old soul.
What's that?
No, I just said like I was always wondering who like has a huge interest watching these movies, because from time to time I watch them, but I cannot say like I'm a huge fan of them, right? So I was always wondering. I always felt like there is the necessity for an old soul to appreciate those kind of movies. So you two watching them proves me absolutely right.
You know, I was asked a question on in a just a regular town hall. They said, "What's the movie you can watch over and over again?" And
Castaway.
And there's Castaway. That's my movie. A beautiful movie about being, I don't know if anybody's seen it.
I remember this one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's I found it just kind of when a movie hits you in terms of being shipwrecked and being in an area where you have nothing but yourself. Yeah. And you have to find your inner strength to get yourself off that island of being stuck by yourself. That's powerful. So, anyways.
Is it with Tom Hanks? Is it the one with Tom Hanks?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, his acting is quite brilliant. I remember being quite but I mean, Tom Hanks is a great actor. Also, what was the other movie? Really famous one he played in.
Oh yeah, with the guy. Yeah, this.
He's done a lot of great movies.
Yeah, but this is like it's kind of like his coming out.
I guess you mean Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump.
Oh yeah.
He's a great actor.
Life's like a box of chocolates. Yeah.
Okay, guys, I found it.
You found it?
Okay, go on.
The quote that I was looking for in Denial of Death. It says,
okay.
"The man of knowledge in our time is bound down under the burden that he never imagined he would ever have, the overproduction of truth that cannot be consumed. For centuries, men thought they lived and believed that the truth was slim and elusive, and that once he found it, the troubles of mankind would be over. And here we are in the closing decades of the 20th century, choking on truth. There has been so much brilliant writing, so many genial discoveries, so vast an extension and elaboration of these discoveries, yet the mind is silent as the world spins in the age-old demonic careers." Basically, I mean, the whole section, that whole paragraph was about how the problem is there's an overproduction of truth that's just all over up. Like, I mean, knowledge and truth. And the task now is to find the gems from the haystack, or whatever. Right? That's become the task of our day instead.
I love that. That's so nice. Are we sharing philosophy quotes? Because I'm gonna bring one. I'm gonna bring one.
I mean, feel free. Yeah.
I'm going to my philosophy wall. I'm going. All right, here. Okay, which one should I choose for you?
You know, these days I sometimes feel like philosophy is highly underestimated because all great solutions eventually emerge from philosophy, because philosophy brings creativity and science together, and like the knowledge of the past, right? And only if you have like these three elements, I think you potentially can create good next iterations. But yeah.
And you have to think about it, you know? It's not just this kind of stupid learning, yes? There's ABC in the book, and I have to write ABC in the exam. Those philosophical questions, well, you have to use your own mind, to get an impression what might be the message. So, that's a good training for our brain.
I'm going to read it from my wall. I'm not gonna take it off, but I'm gonna read it. Just tell me if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yes. So I'm gonna read the one about protecting your inner fortress from fear. No, it is events that give rise to fear. When another has power over them or can prevent them, that person becomes able to inspire fear. How is the fortress destroyed? Not by iron or fire, but by judgments. Here is where we must begin. And it is from this front that we must seize the fortress and throw out the tyrants. Don't betray your fortress from inside. I have been granted a strong fortress. Protect my soul. Epictetus, the Enchiridion.
Oh,
my philosophy, like my image that I have on my thing is from Epictetus.
Right.
I'll even show you. This is I don't usually show this. I don't know if it's being recorded or not, but this is my Epictetus right here.
Yeah, it's being recorded.
So, that looks like the God of War thing.
What's that?
It looks like the God of War character.
It is. It's Kratos, but I've made him into my Epictetus.
Okay.
But you know what? It's philosophy. Like, you know, I don't want to diminish. Like, my brother sent me a message about something to do with like, you know, he's a very spiritual whatever guy, and I always have debates about religion with him because I say I don't think it's about. I think life is about philosophy, and I think that you know, he's very strong-minded and about certain religious beliefs. And I said, look, that's your choice. I believe, you know, at the end of the day, it's about what works for you. And that whole thing about inner fortress is a very powerful statement. It's on my wall. Like, it's actually, I can take it off, but I didn't want to. But yeah, thank you for sharing. You inspired me today to share philosophy. I haven't in a while, but yeah. Lutra or Stella, are you gonna share some philosophy? Maybe Forrest Gump philosophy. I don't know.
No,
Life's
actually,
like a box.
I have some.
I really have to think about it. Yeah, you get me on the wrong foot right now because I do not have that, you know, central message which I could present. But I promise I will deliver next Friday.
Oh, perfect.
You know, Nietzsche is it? Ooh, are we human? Who's this? Which philosopher?
Oh, you're such a fast reader. What the fuck? Okay.
Yeah. I'm. Oh wow. Beatrice Corner.
I think I actually wrote about this book last year in our book list. So it shouldn't be too new to any of you, actually.
All right.
Just messing with you guys.
Lay it on me.
I remember we made the book library, and I think this is one of the books.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, I bought it last year, but it's been over time it's been turning into like one of my all-time favorites, to be honest. It's kind of a young book that because I think this was just, I don't want to say it was recently published, but it's not been out there for a long time, I think. Let me actually quickly check. Yeah, it's like 2016 was the original publishing date, so it's not been out there for long. And interesting enough, so Are We Human is like a question and a historical analysis about how the human from the designer became the designed object itself, right? Everything in our life is now designed and follows like a code of design to a certain degree, and we are acting up on those proposed objects. So essentially, we ourselves have become an extension of design. That's what the whole book is essentially about, right? This is also why it says Notes on an Archaeology of Design. And so there's this one quote.
That's a nice name too.
Yeah, there's so many good books about design that no one ever reads, to be honest, because they tend to be highly philosophical. So there is this one quote I want to find.
What I remember, what I find quite impressive is a kind of philosophy of critical rationalism. So the way Karl Popper was thinking and giving advice to how the scientific progress, should go on. And there was a German guy, he was a Popperian, if you like, Hans Albert. And I really love the writings of Hans Albert. And it's mostly about, well, how do we get, knowledge? Yeah, how can we get a little bit more sophisticated scientific knowledge? And it's always about trials and errors. Yeah, conjectures and refutations. Be creative with the conjectures, but really try to prove that those hypotheses might fail. That this is a quite good way, to get scientific progress and to gain more knowledge. With regard to, let's say, using it as a social technology, that means rather try to have some kind of peaceful social engineering than those huge radical solutions.
I love that. It's like life is an experiment, right? And it's from what I understood from what you said, life is an experiment. And I think we as human beings, we are so fixated on just being deterministic about everything. A lot of the times, right? If 1 + 1 = 2, what happened to 1 + 1 = 11? Right? And so I love that. I think, what I think we should do? We should, at the end of every session, and I've kind of blocked off my calendar now, so hopefully I'll be able to attend these till 10. But I was going to say, at the end of our session, our visual learners, we should always end with one philosophical quote that resonated with us, on kind of giving us some sort of inspiration or fortitude to continue down the path in which we have started on this token engineering journey. Because I think these are the things that kind of help maintain that energy and that momentum. For me at least. So.
No, that's a really nice idea.
Yeah. I feel like not philosophy.
Statement that inspires us, and I like it.
But any idea, I would say any idea. Like, let's not.
Sure.
And any idea that pulls us towards this field or something around it, maybe. Yeah.
But I have a challenge. Challenge, Rohan. So, okay. So if we agree we're going to do this, at the end of the year, we need to capture these. Like, I want to have these captured, because we're going to find the ones that we resonate with respect to all of us, the OGs who've stuck around. And I'm going to get it tattooed.
Oh my God! Okay, let's go. I'm in now.
That is commitment. I will get it tattooed.
That gets us all fired up now.
Definitely.
And I want other people to show the commitment if you want.
What we're always talking about in decentralized finance, you have skin in the game.
Skin in the game.
Literally.
That's
literally skin in the game.
Beautiful. You have skin in the game. I love it. Lutra. So,
too good.
You know what? That's like a culmination of what we've gone through. And you wear those as, like, that's your battle scars of what we're going through. And sometimes we need those. Like, you don't have to get a I will, but, not, you don't have to, but it's just something that it's a part of our life journey. I think it's important. Because we're meeting different people, and I think it's a beautiful thing, a beautiful experience.
I will make an NFT for us. How about
Oh,
that?
perfect.
That's
Okay,
less
yeah.
permanent and more like Web3.
Yeah, that's
I'm
true.
personally against tattoos on my body, so I don't think I can do that. But I'll think of something. I'll think of something that actually sticks with me. Yeah.
Okay.
It
All
might
right.
be a painting on the wall.
It
Oh,
could
yeah.
be a painting on the wall. Absolutely.
Maybe for all my sessions, all my video calls, there'll be
Oh
like
my
that
god,
quote.
no.
that
Okay,
just said on the wall.
guys, I got the solution. We're gonna design a
Okay.
t-shirt. And we do
Yes.
it
Oh,
digitally.
done. Yes.
So there's a digital and a physical format.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's cool.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love
That's
it.
what we're gonna do.
You know what?
I put my quote in the chat, but maybe I may add my philosophic reading as well. So
Yeah, do it.
what is human in the end is neither the designer nor the artifacts, but the interdependency. It is precisely the fully organic
Just
condition.
one sec. I'm so sorry. Starter, can you mute because it's the echo
Oh,
is.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, poor Strata. Okay. Now you're all muting. Okay. What is human in the end is neither the designer nor the artifacts, but their interdependency. It is precisely the fully organic condition of technological life, the fact that it is a life that raises the urgent questions about design. In particular, it raises the question of how, where, and when invention itself was invented. How did that impulse to do things differently arise? And it kind of like loops very nicely back into, what we're doing here, because we're trying to invent something new, right? So we seem to have an inherent need for that. But where did this come from? And essentially it came from something that was already designed and acknowledged by us as faulty, right? So it's like a loop we're running through in a sense, and acknowledging that this loop depends on neither the designed output entirely nor on the human itself entirely, but like the interdependencies before what was designed before and what is being designed in the future, essentially. And this like very alive, very organic relationship, right, keeps to iterate and iterate and iterate. Well.
Yeah, in a way that's conjectures and refutations.
Absolutely. And the thing that when you just read that, what resonated with me was the fact that maybe this is a deep Friday morning. I don't know how my rest of my day is going to go, but it started on a very good foot. The thing that what I took away from that is that we're so what you said, to be human, right? It's neither to be the designer nor the artifacts, but the interdependency. And you know what that tells me? It's about the process. It's about the process of our life. And the things in life in which we enjoy and we do with such passion, and we don't focus on the outcome, those are the beautiful outputs that we are blown away by.
Yeah.
And so that what you just said kind of reminded me of that. That dependent, Lutra, like that whole dependency in life and alive.
Yeah.
And it's not about focusing on the outcome or the artifact. It's about the interdependency of what we're doing every day to day.
Yeah.
The
way to get there might be much more important and much more fancy, than seeing the goal.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay,
it made me reflect a little, on this thing. I think, something about the circularity, the thing that you spoke about, Stella, it reminded me of the Stephen Fry quote. He was on stage, he was giving the speech, and he spoke about a quote from Bertrand Russell. It was really, really nice. It was, one of the most painful things about our time is that those who feel certainty are stupid, and those with any imagination or understanding are filled with doubt and indecision. Let doubt prevail. I just loved that quote so much.
That's powerful.
Awesome.
Powerful.
Let doubt
A
prevail.
beautiful quote. Because you're right. You know what? When you're being creative, you're always full of doubt because you're not sure if it's going to land, if other people are going to understand, or you're going to be, I don't know, judged unnecessarily for being creative. Right? That's what leadership is about.
But also I think there is a certain degree in which, we I've met a lot of people, especially in Web3, that tend to have very extreme opinions, right? And I think partially this also, comes from cultural background. But another part is that people have this tendency to want to reduce complexity, right? Take the complexity away, and then they land like on one extreme side or the other extreme side of the spectrum. And I think it's literally our responsibility to not go there, just not go there, right? Whenever we feel tempted to just simplify things and be like, that's the only solution I really want to look at, right? Take that consciously away from yourself and say like, no, this is one of the things I'm going to look at, and I'm going to force myself through this daunting process of making sure I have looked at everything else as well, right? It needs people like us who are willing to do that extra mile of work, because a lot of people just don't want to do it. Honestly, that is the reason, right? There are different kinds of people, and we make up for that kind of people who don't want to take the time or don't see the necessity and looking at things in more detail. So also when we design algorithmic driven solutions, I think we need to look at almost like everything. I mean, Rohan knows this. We're like currently training Alana as an AI, and we just, did like our first test and observations with the first iteration of it. It was scary as hell, right? Because she has obviously not been trained on enough data sets, not at all, right? There's just like essentially the base layer, and then there's like 6,000 words I wrote about her. So that's not sufficient. And she even claimed that she invented NFTs. So you end up, if you are not looking at being very detailed, right? This is when you look at very, very faulty and scary mechanisms and supposedly, helpful tools that are ending up not being very helpful. And up on our little group of like engineers and not engineers trying to do this, I actually watched the interview with OpenAI CEO, blah, 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 I don't know his name, and also the CTO gave an interview, different interview. And what I liked the most about how they, stated like their approach or opinions or assessment of, certain predicaments with AI was how careful they were trying to look at all of these things and how cautious they apparently make decisions. Of course, they can lie to us, right? Every human can lie. But let's just assume it's true. I really appreciate this. Some things, they cannot just be broken over a leg and put in place from one day to another. They need time to develop and mature, right? And we've seen a lot of things, especially in this place, being put in place way too fast, up on the request of shareholders. And it's scary, and it brings distrust. It brings a system down that could potentially be so good for like the majority finally of people in this world, right? So I don't really know where I wanted to go with this, but anyway, I got it out there.
Well, it might bring up fears. Yes. Yeah. If I do not get the point, or if I just have simple truth, I might be scared as hell, and that brings us back to Strata's comment, with the fears, the walls, and fire, and
the inner fortress. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a fortress. Exactly.
I think we should just do a podcast. I think we should. I'm not joking.
This is basically a podcast. So
it is a podcast.
Guys, if you're watching, this is like the Visual Learners podcast.
We should just do it. Let's just bring the next topic. But I don't know. Podcasts are easily consumable on your whatever Google Podcast, whatever your podcast mode is. But I think these are the things that the community needs, is to hear. Like, we have a voice. We all have our own perspectives. And I think sharing these sorts of perspectives on making this world a better place, and then the concerns like what you just said, Stella, about the by rushing through, like that's something that's innate. That's an innate problem in traditional finance and economics and our future world. And tech, absolutely.
And we are bringing both together. So this is why also this space sometimes feels so like hyper fast, right? Because you put together like, and this is also.
And it would be a niche.
Yeah.
It would be a niche because there are so many podcasts, about investing in crypto or stuff like that. Yeah. But this kind of blockchain and philosophy, or Web3 and philosophy, that's really a product niche.
You'll have my heart. I will be there. I would never.
I made some notes there, and this is crypto philosophy.
I'm down.
Love it.
I love it. Lutra, I would just say I would never miss a recording jam session for a podcast around crypto philosophy. I think that, or token engineering philosophy, something around there that kind of grows, because it's very important.
Strata, I kind of brought this up during our last session. I'm actually having like a lot of doubts on the naming of our what we're doing here. I think token engineering doesn't do it justice anymore. There's like so much more to it. It's like reducing something again to like its most minimal component, right? Which is like, okay, the result of this, right? Yeah. But it's not doing it justice. Honestly, we have to talk with Michael about this. We have to really like,
about
Michael,
our podcast
about that.
But you want to know something? I was just going to say, I don't think we're here to change that. I think we can always just find, and like Lutra said, a niche for us to talk about further. So I apologize. I have to drop in 1 minute, but what I was going to say is that I would like to maybe come back to next week's and say, here's what I'm thinking about. Maybe I don't want to pressure anybody else, but if anybody else wants to do a podcast, I would actually put things together and kind of maybe we can figure stuff out. I would love to just even start a podcast around the philosophies of crypto and how we're building this and leveraging some of the learnings that we've learned through token engineering, but bringing our own philosophical views.
I mean, honestly, like if you
I could deliver some kind of list of topics that might be interesting to discuss under this kind of perspective.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. Let's revisit.
Yeah, because I mean, I spent so much. I have so many notes already from all the videos that I've seen. The philosophy of the space is already up on my Notion page. I can share it with them. Yeah,
and I'm like the old school person here.
Oh yeah. No, I mean for me it's like how we are building this biodiversity of economic forms and how we are like composing systems on top of each other, almost like joints. And I have like so many ideas about what is happening here. I feel like it'll be lovely to speak.
I love that.
Okay. I'm gonna come up with a plan. I'd like everybody else to have a plan in terms of maybe for next week we can talk about how do we want to start it, and let's not worry about it being perfect. Let's just launch it. That's what I. Okay. Have yourself a great weekend. Bon fin de semaine, and I'll see you next week.